The morning sun never reached the training deck of Terra 7. The massive space station floated high above Earth, spinning slowly in the darkness of orbit. Inside, artificial lights blazed down on the combat arena where soldiers from across the galaxy prepared for another day of training. Corporal Yang stood in the corner of the training deck, moving through his morning routine. His movements were slow and precise. He stepped forward, turned his body, and brought his hands up in a blocking motion. Then he shifted his weight and moved into a strike. Each movement flowed into the next like water running downhill. Yang had practiced these movements since he was 6 years old. His grandfather had taught him in a small dojo in California, showing him the ancient art of the ninja. Now, at 28 years old and serving in Earth's military, Yang still began each day the same way. The movements cleared his mind and prepared his body. Across the training deck, a group of alien soldiers watched him. They were tall reptilian warriors with scales that shimmered like polished steel. Their leader, Commander, stood with his arms crossed. Next to him was his nephew, Crown Prince, who would one day rule their home world. Pointed at Yang and laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. "Look at the human," he said loudly. "He dances like a child at a festival." The other soldiers joined in the laughter. Their deep voices echoed across the training deck. Several human soldiers nearby stopped what they were doing and looked down at the floor. The embarrassment was clear on their faces. Shook his head slowly. "Earth was admitted to the coalition only 2 years ago," he said. "They still cling to their primitive ways. They do not understand that the old methods have no place in modern warfare." Yang heard every word, but he did not stop his movements. He continued his kata, blocking out the voices. He had learned long ago that responding to mockery only encouraged it. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. A true warrior does not need to prove himself with words. Private Jin Li stood near the equipment storage area. She was one of the few human soldiers who had seen Yang truly fight. During their basic training on Earth, she had watched him disarm 3 attackers in less than 10 seconds. She knew the quiet corporal was far more dangerous than he appeared. Jin walked over to where Lieutenant Haewon Park was reviewing training schedules on a data pad. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, "shouldn't we say something? They're mocking Corporal." Park looked up from her pad and glanced at Yang. Her expression was stern. "They have won 47 consecutive training matches against our soldiers, Private. They dominate every combat simulation. Maybe instead of doing ancient dances, Corporal should focus on tactics that actually work in the 23rd century." Jin wanted to argue, but she knew better than to challenge an officer. She returned to her station, but her hands were clenched into fists. The training session began officially when the station's computer announced the start time. Commander gathered his soldiers and explained the day's exercise. It would be a simulated urban combat scenario. They would defend a position while human soldiers attempted to take it. Lieutenant Park assembled the human team. She assigned Yang to a flanking position, along with 2 other soldiers. "Your job is to approach from the east and create a distraction," she told them. "Don't try anything fancy, just follow the plan." Yang nodded. "Yes, Lieutenant." The simulation began. The training deck transformed using holographic technology. Walls appeared, creating a maze of buildings and streets. The soldiers took their positions, their weapons powered down to training levels that would sting but not kill. Yang moved through the simulated city with his team. He stayed low, using the shadows and corners for cover. His training told him where to step to make the least noise, how to move without creating a visible silhouette. The other 2 soldiers followed behind him, trying to copy his movements but making much more noise. They had technology on their side. Thermal sensors showed them exactly where the humans were hiding. Energy shields protected them from the training weapons. Their own weapons had longer range and more power. When Yang and his team rounded a corner, 3 soldiers were waiting. The aliens opened fire immediately. The training bolts hit Yang in the chest and shoulder. The impacts felt like being punched, and the computer registered him as eliminated. His voice came over the communication system, broadcast to everyone in the simulation. The ninja is eliminated. He tried to sneak like a mouse, but our sensors saw him clearly. Perhaps he should have danced more quietly. More laughter echoed from the positions. The human soldiers who were still active in the simulation heard it all. Their morale dropped even lower. The simulation ended after 20 minutes. The had eliminated every human soldier without losing a single member of their team. It was the 48th consecutive loss for the human forces. After the exercise, all soldiers gathered for the debriefing, stood at the front and reviewed the performance. "The humans show bravery," he said, "but bravery without skill is just foolishness. You cannot fight modern warfare with ancient tricks." Stood beside his uncle. "Perhaps the humans should return to their museums where they belong. Their so-called ninja can put on shows for tourists." The prince was young, barely 20 in Earth years, but he carried himself with arrogance born from never experiencing true defeat. Yang sat in the back row, his face calm. Jin sat next to him and whispered, "You don't have to take this." "Yes, I do," Yang replied quietly, "for now." Lieutenant Park dismissed the human soldiers. As they filed out, she stopped Yang. "Corporal, I need you to focus during training. This martial arts practice in the morning is becoming a distraction. It makes our unit look foolish in front of the other species." Yang met her eyes. "It is not a distraction, Lieutenant. It is preparation." "Preparation for what? We're not fighting with swords anymore. We have energy weapons and shields and sensors. Your grandfather's teachings are history, not tactics." Park's voice was not cruel, but it was firm. "I'm ordering you to stop the morning demonstrations. If you want to exercise, use the gym like everyone else." "Understood, Lieutenant," Yang said. He gave a small bow and walked away. Jin caught up with him in the corridor outside the training deck. "That's not fair," she said. "She doesn't understand." Yang smiled slightly. "She will. When the time comes, she will." "When will that be?" "When it needs to be," Yang said. He continued down the corridor toward his quarters, leaving Jin wondering what he meant. In the section of the barracks celebrated with his soldiers, they drank and laughed, replaying the simulation and mocking the human attempts to fight. The prince raised his glass high. "In 2 weeks the Coalition War Games begin. Every species will see what we already know. Humans are weak. They do not belong among warriors." His soldiers cheered. None of them noticed Commander standing in the doorway, watching his nephew with a troubled expression. The commander had fought in many wars. He had seen species rise and fall, and he knew that pride often came before a terrible fall. But he said nothing. He simply turned and walked away, leaving his nephew to his celebration. The days that followed were harder than before. They seemed to take their victories as permission to push even further. During every training session, they found new ways to humiliate the human soldiers. They did not just defeat them anymore. They made sure everyone watched when they did it. Yang no longer performed his morning kata on the training deck. Lieutenant Park had ordered him to stop, and he followed orders. Instead, he woke 2 hours before the official day began and found empty corridors in the older sections of Terra 7. These areas were scheduled for maintenance and rarely used. In the darkness and silence, he practiced. Jin discovered him on the 3rd morning. She had been unable to sleep and was walking the station when she heard the soft sound of movement. Following the noise, she found Yang in an abandoned cargo bay. He moved through forms she had never seen before, his body flowing like smoke in the dim emergency lighting. She watched from the doorway for several minutes before speaking. "You're still training." Yang stopped mid-movement and turned to face her. He was breathing normally despite the intense exercise. "The body remembers what the mind forgets," he said. "I cannot let either grow soft." "Can you teach me?" Jin asked. "After what I saw in basic training, I know this isn't just dancing. The lieutenant is wrong. Yang considered her request. Finally, he nodded. Come tomorrow at the same time, wear comfortable clothes, and tell no one. Jin smiled, thank you. During the official training sessions, the pattern continued. The one every simulation. They were stronger, faster, and had better equipment. Their energy shields could stop most weapons. Their sensors could detect heat, movement, and even heartbeats through walls. But it was not just about winning anymore. Had started adding personal touches to the victories. When he eliminated a human soldier in a simulation, he would stand over them and make comments. Too slow, too weak, too predictable. The words cut deeper than the training weapons. On the 5th day, something worse happened. Private Dong was a young soldier from Korea, barely 19 years old. He was fast and brave, and during a close combat drill, he almost managed to tag with a training blade. Almost. Blocked the strike, but instead of simply disarming Dong according to the rules, the prince twisted the young soldier's arm with his full strength. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the training deck. Dong screamed and fell to the ground, clutching his arm. The medical team rushed in immediately. They took Dong to the medical bay while the other soldiers watched in shocked silence. The bone would heal completely with modern medicine, but everyone knew what had happened. It was not an accident. Lieutenant Park filed a formal complaint. The station commander reviewed the footage and called it a regrettable training incident. No disciplinary action was taken against. The official report stated that close combat drills always carried risks, and both participants had accepted those risks. Commander sent a formal apology to the human contingent, but his nephew did not, acted as if nothing had happened. During the next training session, he was louder and more aggressive than ever. Yang visited Dong in the medical bay that evening. The young private lay in a bed with his arm in a regeneration cast. His eyes were red from crying, though he tried to hide it when Yang entered. Corporal, Dong said, attempting to sit up straight. Rest, Yang told him. He pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. How do you feel? Angry, Dong admitted. And helpless. We can't beat them. They're too strong, too advanced, and they know it. Yang was quiet for a moment. Then he said, strength is not only in muscles and technology. My grandfather used to tell me a story about a river and a stone. The stone is hard and strong. The river is soft and flows around it. But given enough time, the river carves through the stone. Do you know why? Why, Dong asked. Because the river never stops, it is patient, it adapts, and it knows that hardness can become brittleness. Yang stood up. Rest and heal, this is not over. As Yang left the medical bay, he nearly collided with Captain Miran. She was an intelligence officer, assigned to Terra 7 to coordinate information between Earth and the Coalition. She was 32 years old, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Corporal, she said with a nod, how is Private Dong? He will recover, Captain. Miran's expression hardened. What happened today was disgraceful. They are pushing boundaries to see what they can get away with. Yes, Captain. And we can do nothing about it, not officially. She looked at Yang with an appraising expression. I've read your file, Corporal. You have skills that aren't listed in the standard military database, skills from before you enlisted. Yang said nothing, waiting. If the opportunity ever arises to show that humans are not as weak as they believe, I hope someone takes it. Miran gave him a meaningful look. Have a good evening, Corporal. She walked away, leaving Yang standing in the corridor. He understood what she was really saying. The officers could not act without causing a diplomatic incident. But if a soldier, acting on his own, found a way to change the situation, the officers might look the other way. The next morning, Jin met Yang in the abandoned cargo bay. He taught her the basic stance, how to distribute her weight, how to breathe. Everything begins with balance, he explained. Your center of gravity is here. He placed his hand on her abdomen. All power flows from this point. They trained for an hour before the official day began. Jin struggled with the movements at first. She was used to direct, aggressive tactics. This was different. This required patience and precision. "I feel like I'm moving too slowly," she complained. "You are learning to move correctly," Yang corrected. "Speed comes later. First, you must build the foundation." By the end of the week, 2 more soldiers had joined the secret training sessions. They had heard from Jin about what Yang was teaching. They wanted to learn something, anything, that might give them an edge. Meanwhile, they continued to dominate. Their winning streak reached 54 consecutive victories. Other alien species stationed on Terra 7 began to join in the mockery of humans. It seemed everyone wanted to align themselves with the winners and distance themselves from the losers. During a mixed-species briefing about the upcoming Coalition War Games, an officer made a joke about how Earth should send dancers instead of soldiers to the competition. The room erupted in laughter. Even some of the human officers forced smiles, trying not to show how much the words hurt. Only Yang remained completely still, his face showing no emotion at all. Jin, sitting beside him, saw his hands resting calmly in his lap, but she also noticed something the others did not. His fingers were positioned in a subtle meditation grip, a technique he had taught her to maintain inner calm during stress. That night, Yang trained alone in the cargo bay. He moved faster than usual, his strikes cutting through the air with sharp precision. Each movement was a release of the frustration he never showed on his face. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he worked through advanced forms that his grandfather had taught him. He thought about Dong's broken arm. He thought about the laughter in the briefing room. He thought about Lieutenant Park's order to stop embarrassing the unit. And he thought about his grandfather's final lesson before the old man died. "Yang," his grandfather had said, lying in the hospital bed, "there will come a time when everyone doubts you, when they see your stillness as weakness and your patience as fear. In that moment, you must remember what I teach you now. The tiger does not roar before it strikes. It waits in silence until the moment is perfect. Then it moves and the prey never sees it coming." Yang finished his training and stood in the center of the cargo bay, breathing deeply. He could feel it approaching. The moment his grandfather had spoken about. It was not here yet, but it was coming. And when it arrived, he would be ready. In the quarters, laughed with his soldiers and planned even greater humiliations for the humans. The Coalition War Games were only 9 days away, and he intended to make sure everyone remembered how weak Earth's warriors truly were. Commander watched his nephew from across the room and felt a growing unease in his chest. Pride, he knew, was the warrior's greatest enemy, but he also knew that some lessons could only be learned through painful experience. The Coalition officers' banquet was held in the largest hall on Terra 7. Representatives from every species gathered to celebrate before the war games began. The room glowed with lights of different colors, each chosen to make the various alien species feel comfortable. Long tables held food from dozens of worlds. Music played softly in the background, a mixture of sounds that somehow worked together despite coming from completely different cultures. Yang was assigned to security detail for the evening. He wore his dress uniform and stood at attention near the main entrance. His job was to watch and respond to any problems, though problems at such formal events were rare. Usually, everyone behaved according to diplomatic protocol. Jin was also on security duty, stationed across the hall. She caught Yang's eye once and gave him a small nod. In the past week, she had improved significantly in her training. She was beginning to understand the principles he taught, and her movements were becoming more fluid. Captain Miran arrived early, wearing her formal dress uniform with her medals displayed. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, speaking with officers from different species. She represented Earth's intelligence division, and making connections was part of her job. They arrived as a group, with Commander leading them. Behind him walked Crown Prince, dressed in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. The prince's scales had been polished until they shone like mirrors. He looked every bit the future ruler of a powerful empire. His father, General, was also present. The general was massive even by standards, with scars covering his arms and face. He had fought in the coalition's war against the invasion 20 years ago and was considered a hero across multiple systems. He rarely left his home world, but the war games were important enough to bring him to Terra 7. The dinner began with formal speeches. The station commander welcomed everyone and spoke about unity and cooperation between species. Several other high-ranking officers made similar statements. Everyone applauded politely, even though most of them were thinking about the competitions to come. As the evening progressed and the formal portion ended, the atmosphere became more relaxed. Officers mingled and talked. Servants brought drinks. The music grew slightly louder. Drank heavily. Alcohol was strong and the prince consumed it quickly. His voice grew louder, his movements less controlled. His father noticed and frowned but said nothing. Moved closer to his nephew, ready to intervene if necessary. Captain Miran stood near one of the food tables, reviewing something on her data pad. She was alone, focused on her work even during the social event. Noticed her and walked over. His steps were not quite steady. "Captain," he said, his words slightly slurred, "you should not work during a celebration. You should drink and enjoy yourself." Miran looked up with a professional smile. "Thank you, Prince, but I have reports to finish before tomorrow." "Reports can wait," said. He reached out and placed his hand on her arm. "You should spend time with someone important, like me." Miran's smile disappeared. She pulled her arm back gently. "I appreciate the offer, but I really must finish my work." His expression changed. Among, refusing a royal was a serious insult. The alcohol in his system made him react more aggressively than he might have sober. He grabbed her arm again, harder this time. "I am not asking, Captain. I am telling you to put away your work and give me your attention." Several people nearby noticed what was happening. The room began to grow quiet. Culture was different from human culture, and no one was sure how to respond. Was this acceptable behavior for a prince among his people? Would interfering create a diplomatic incident? Yang saw everything from his position by the door. He saw grab Miran's arm. He saw her face show discomfort and then fear. He saw the other officers looking away, pretending not to notice. Without thinking about consequences or protocol, Yang walked across the hall. His steps were quick but calm. He stopped beside and spoke in a clear, respectful voice. "Prince, Captain has asked you to release her. Please do so." The entire hall fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned to watch the confrontation between the small human corporal and the tall prince. Released Miran's arm and turned to face Yang. For a moment he seemed confused. Then recognition crossed his face and he began to laugh. "The ninja speaks. I did not know you had a voice. I thought you only danced." Several soldiers laughed with their prince, but others in the hall did not. They watched with serious expressions, understanding that something important was happening. Yang kept his voice calm and respectful. "I ask again, Prince. Please step away from Captain and allow her to continue her work." His laughter stopped. His eyes narrowed. "You dare tell me what to do, you who hide in shadows and pretend to be a warrior, you who have lost every single training match." He stepped closer to Yang, using his greater height to look down at the human. "What will you do if I refuse, little ninja? Will you dance at me?" Yang did not move backward. He stood his ground, looking up at the prince with steady eyes. "I ask a third time, please step away." Something in Yang's voice made his anger flare. The prince reached out with both hands and shoved Yang hard in the chest. The force would have knocked most humans off their feet and sent them stumbling backward. But Yang had trained for this his entire life. As hands made contact, Yang shifted his weight and redirected the energy. His feet slid back only a few inches, and his body remained upright and balanced. To everyone watching, it appeared as if the massive prince had barely moved the small human corporal. Stared in disbelief. Then his face twisted with rage. In culture, being unable to physically dominate someone smaller was a profound humiliation. The alcohol in his system removed his usual self-control. "You mock me," shouted. "You dare to embarrass a prince of the empire." He turned to address the entire hall. "I challenge this human to a display of honor. Let us see if his tricks work in real combat, or if he is just a coward who knows only how to absorb a push." The hall erupted in whispers. A display of honor was a formal combat challenge in culture. It was used to settle disputes between warriors. By the laws of the coalition, all member species had to respect each other's traditional methods of resolving conflicts. Refusing such a challenge would bring shame not just to the individual, but to their entire species. Commander pushed through the crowd. "Nephew, you are drunk. Withdraw the challenge." But shook his head violently. "No, the challenge is made. It is witnessed by all present. It cannot be withdrawn." He turned back to Yang. "What do you say, ninja? Will you face me in honorable combat, or will you prove that humans are cowards as well as weak?" Yang felt dozens of eyes on him. He saw Lieutenant Park pushing through the crowd, her face showing alarm. He saw Jin standing at her post, her hand clenched into a fist. He saw Captain Miran watching him with an expression that was hard to read. And he saw something else. He saw General standing at the back of the hall, watching silently. The general's face showed no emotion, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Yang thought about his grandfather. He thought about Dong's broken arm. He thought about every humiliation the humans had suffered over the past weeks. And he thought about the tiger waiting in silence for the perfect moment to strike. "I accept your challenge, Prince," Yang said clearly. The hall exploded with noise. Some people cheered, others protested. Lieutenant Park finally reached Yang and grabbed his arm. "Corporal, you cannot do this. Withdraw immediately. That's an order." But the duel master, an old warrior named, had already stepped forward. "The challenge is made and accepted before witnesses. By coalition law, it cannot be withdrawn by either party or by their commanders. The display of honor will proceed." Explain the rules to everyone present. "The combat will be held tomorrow at dawn in the main arena. Both combatants will use traditional weapons only, with no technological enhancements. No energy shields, no powered armor, no advanced optics. First blood ends the match." He paused and added in a grave voice, "Killing is forbidden. However, accidents in combat are understood and forgiven by our law." Everyone knew what that meant. If killed Yang during the match, it would be called an accident, and no punishment would follow. Lieutenant Park pulled Yang aside as the crowd began to disperse. "Why did you do this?" she demanded. "He will kill you. He is twice your size and trained from birth in combat. This is suicide." "With respect, Lieutenant, it is not," Yang replied calmly. "It is necessary." Before Park could respond, Jin appeared carrying something wrapped in cloth. "I went to your quarters," she said to Yang. "I thought you might need this." She handed him the bundle. Yang unwrapped it carefully, revealing a katana in a black scabbard. The sword had belonged to his grandfather and his grandfather's father before that. He had kept it hidden in his personal locker, never thinking he would use it on Terra 7. "Show them," Jin whispered. "Show them what we really are." Yang bowed to her, then to Lieutenant Park. "I should rest before tomorrow. With your permission, Lieutenant." Park wanted to say more to forbid this somehow, but she knew it was too late. "Dismissed, Corporal, and good luck." As Yang left the hall, he passed General. The massive looked down at the small human and spoke in a deep voice. "You have courage, Corporal. I hope for your sake that you also have skill." "Thank you, General," Yang replied. He continued walking, carrying his grandfather's sword. Behind him, the hall buzzed with conversation. The news was already spreading throughout the station. Tomorrow at dawn, the mocked human ninja would face the prince. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. though most assumed they already knew. It would be a quick fight and a brutal lesson about the difference between ancient traditions and real combat power. Only a few people thought differently. Jin believed in Yang. Captain Miran suspected there was more to the quiet corporal than anyone realized. And General, who had fought in more battles than anyone else present, sensed something in Yang's eyes that reminded him of the most dangerous warriors he had ever faced. The perfect calm before the strike. Dawn came slowly to Terra 7, though the space station had no natural sunrise. The computer system simply adjusted the lighting to simulate morning. But for those who had not slept, waiting for the duel, it felt like the longest night of their lives. The main arena was packed. Thousands of soldiers from dozens of species filled the stands. News of the challenge had spread through the entire station within hours. Everyone wanted to witness the display of honor between the prince and the human ninja. Most came expecting entertainment. A few came hoping for a miracle. The arena floor was a large circle, 50 meters across, with a surface designed to provide good traction. Stadium lights blazed down from above, eliminating all shadows. There would be no darkness for Yang to hide in, no corners to use for advantage. Just open space and two warriors. Yang arrived early, accompanied only by Jin. He wore simple black training clothes with no armor or protection. His grandfather's katana hung at his side. He had spent the night preparing himself mentally, meditating on everything his grandfather had taught him. Jin looked at the massive crowd and felt her stomach tighten with fear. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. "I am always ready," Yang replied. "That is what the training means. When the moment comes, there is no thought, no doubt, only action." On the opposite side of the arena made his entrance. He walked surrounded by warriors, all chanting his name. The prince wore ceremonial armor that covered his chest, shoulders, and legs. The metal gleamed under the lights. In his hands he carried a war blade, a massive sword that would require both hands for a human to lift, but that wielded easily in one. The crowd roared as entered the arena. He raised his weapon high and shouted challenges to the sky. Then he pointed the blade at Yang and dragged it across the ground, creating sparks. The message was clear. "This is what I will do to you." The duel master stood at the center of the arena. He was old but still strong, his scales faded to gray with age. He had overseen hundreds of displays of honor in his long life. He gestured for both combatants to approach. Yang walked forward calmly, strode forward with aggressive confidence. They stopped 3 meters apart, facing each other. The size difference was dramatic. Stood nearly 7 feet tall, his muscled frame covered in natural armor and enhanced by ceremonial plates. Yang was barely 5 feet 9 inches, slim and seemingly fragile in comparison. "The rules are simple," announced, his voice amplified so all could hear. "No technology may assist either combatant. No shields, no enhancements, no external aids, only the weapons you carry and the skills you possess. First blood ends the match. If either combatant cannot continue, the match ends. Killing is forbidden, but accidents in the heat of combat are understood." He looked at both warriors. "Do you understand?" "Yes," said. "Yes," Yang replied. Stepped back to the edge of the circle. He raised his hand. The arena fell silent. Thousands of beings held their breath. Dropped his hand. "Begin." Did not wait. He charged immediately, his war blade raised high. His strategy was simple: use his size and strength to overwhelm the smaller human before any tricks could be employed. End it in seconds. But Yang did not move. He stood perfectly still, watching charge toward him. His hand rested lightly on the handle of his katana, but he had not drawn it yet. The crowd gasped. Was the human frozen in fear? Had he given up before the fight even began? Was 5 meters away. 4, 3. He swung his war blade down in a devastating arc that would have split Yang in half. At the last possible instant, Yang moved. His foot slid to the side, his body turned, and's blade crashed into the ground where Yang had been standing a fraction of a second before. The prince's momentum carried him forward, and he stumbled past Yang. The human had not even drawn his weapon. Spun around, his face showing confusion and anger. "Stand and fight, coward." But Yang said nothing. He simply returned to his calm stance, waiting. Charged again, this time with a horizontal slash. Again, Yang did not move until the last moment. Again, he stepped aside with minimal effort, and's blade cut only air. The pattern repeated 3 more times. Each time, attacked with increasing fury. Each time, Yang avoided the strike with movements so small they seemed impossible. It was as if he knew exactly where the blade would be before it arrived. The crowd began to murmur. This was not what anyone expected. The human was not fighting, but he was not being hit either. How was he avoiding strikes from a warrior who had never lost a match? Commander leaned forward in his seat, his eyes narrowing. He began to see what was happening. The human was studying, learning his patterns. Every attack revealed information about the prince's style, his preferences, his timing. General saw it too. A small smile appeared on his face. "The tiger waits," he murmured to himself. Was breathing heavily now. The ceremonial armor was beautiful but heavy, and his furious charges were exhausting. Sweat dripped from his scales. "Fight me," he screamed. "Draw your weapon and fight." For the first time, Yang spoke. His voice was calm and carried clearly across the silent arena. "You fight with anger. Anger makes you blind." Something in those words pushed over the edge. With a roar of pure rage, he charged again, swinging his war blade in a series of powerful strikes. High, low, middle, spinning attacks, overhead smashes. He threw everything he had at the human. And Yang dodged it all. His movements were fluid like water, each step perfectly measured. He flowed around the attacks rather than blocking them. To those watching from the stands, it looked like a dance, but it was more than that. It was perfect control and perfect awareness. Finally, Yang drew his katana. The blade emerged from its scabbard with a soft whisper of steel. It looked tiny compared to Swar's blade, delicate and fragile. But when Yang moved into his first attack, everything changed. He stepped inside's guard and struck. The katana hit the ceremonial armor on's chest with a sharp clang. The blade did not penetrate the armor, but it left a small scratch on the polished surface. Before it could react, Yang struck again in exactly the same spot. And again, and again. His strikes came so fast they blurred together. Each one hit the precise point where the previous strike had landed. Tried to back away, but Yang moved with him. The human's footwork was flawless, maintaining perfect distance. Strike after strike hammered the same point on the armor. The metal began to crack. The crowd erupted in noise. This was impossible. That armor could withstand plasma bolts. How was a simple steel sword damaging it? But Yang's grandfather had taught him about materials and stress points. Any material, no matter how strong, would fail if struck repeatedly in exactly the same location. It was not about the strength of a single blow. It was about the accumulation of many precise strikes. Realized what was happening and tried to adjust his position. But he was tired now, his movement slower. Yang's attacks continued, relentless and perfectly accurate. The crack in the armor grew larger. Pieces began to fall away. Desperate, launched a wild overhead strike, putting all his remaining strength into one massive blow. If it connected, it would kill Yang instantly. But the attack was too wild, too predictable. Yang saw it coming. As the war blade descended, he stepped forward instead of back. He moved inside the arc of the swing, where the blade had no power. In one smooth motion, Yang struck upward with his katana. The blade hits wrist at precisely the right angle. The war blade flew from the prince's hand and clattered across the arena floor. Stood defenseless, his eyes wide with shock. Yang did not pause. His grandfather had taught him, Once you commit to the strike, you must follow through completely. Hesitation could mean death. He stepped forward and brought his katana across in a horizontal slash aimed at its throat. The crowd screamed. General stood up from his seat. Commander reached out as if he could somehow stop what was about to happen. The katana touched throat and drew a thin line of blood across the scales. Then Yang stopped. He pulled the blade back and stepped away. The cut was barely deeper than a scratch. First blood had been drawn. The match was over. Rushed forward to examine the wound. First blood to corporal. The display of honor is complete. But no one in the crowd was cheering. They were all too shocked by what they had witnessed. The slash had been perfectly controlled. Yang could have pushed the blade deeper. He could have cut through his throat and killed him. By law, it would have been called an accident, and he would have faced no punishment. But he had not. He had stopped at exactly the right depth to fulfill the requirements of the duel and nothing more. Reached up and touched his throat. His fingers came away with a small amount of blood on them. He stared at the blood, then at Yang. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees. The prince had never been defeated before. He had never felt truly helpless. But in that moment, kneeling in the arena with his opponent's blade having touched his throat, he understood something profound. Strength was not only about size or power. It was about control, about knowing when to strike and when to show mercy. Yang sheathed his katana with a smooth motion. He bowed respectfully too, then turned and walked toward the exit where Jin waited. The crowd remained silent for several more seconds. Then someone began to clap, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. The applause built until the entire arena thundered with it. Every species present understood what they had witnessed, a master at work. General descended from his seat and walked onto the arena floor. He approached his son, who still knelt on the ground. But instead of helping up, the general walked past him and followed Yang. Corporal called out. Yang stopped and turned. The general approached and then did something that shocked everyone. He bowed deeply, the formal bow of respect given to a superior warrior. "You could have killed my son," said. "You showed mercy I would not have shown. This is true strength." He straightened. "House owes you a blood debt. If you ever need our aid, you have only to ask." Yang bowed in return. "Your son has courage, General. Today he learned humility. That makes him stronger, not weaker." As Yang left the arena with Jin, he heard being helped to his feet by his uncle. The prince looked at Yang's retreating back with an expression that was no longer arrogant or mocking. It was thoughtful and perhaps even grateful. The tiger had struck, and the galaxy would not forget it. The medical bay was quiet when Yang visited 3 hours after the duel. He had cleaned himself, changed into a fresh uniform, and prepared himself for this conversation. The guard at the entrance recognized him immediately and stepped aside without question. Sat on a medical bed, his ceremonial armor removed. The cut on his throat had been sealed with medical gel and would leave no scar, but the wound to his pride would take much longer to heal. When he saw Yang enter, he looked down at his hands. "I came to check on your condition," Yang said quietly. Did not respond immediately. Finally, he spoke, his voice lacking all its previous arrogance. "Why did you not kill me? You had the right. The law would have protected you." Yang pulled up a chair and sat down. "Taking a life is easy. Knowing when not to take a life is harder. My grandfather taught me that the greatest victory is the one that creates no enemies." "But I was your enemy," said. "I mocked you. I hurt your fellow soldier. I humiliated your people." "Yes," Yang agreed. "And if I had killed you, your father would have been my enemy forever, even if the law said he could not seek revenge. The Empire would have resented Earth. Thousands of soldiers would have remembered only that a human killed their prince. But now," he paused, "now you are alive, you can learn, you can grow, and perhaps one day you will be the ruler your people need." Looked up at Yang with new understanding. "You planned this. Even before you accepted my challenge, You knew you would win, and you knew you would spare me. I did not know I would win, Yang corrected. You are a skilled warrior. The outcome was uncertain, but I knew that if I did win, mercy would serve everyone better than death. They sat in silence for a moment, then stood and bowed deeply. Corporal, I request that you accept me as your student. Teach me to see combat the way you see it. Teach me to control my anger and fight with wisdom instead of rage. Yang considered the request. The path is difficult. You will need to unlearn many things before you can learn new ones. I understand, I am willing. Then I will teach you, Yang said. But first you must do something for me. Anything. Go to Private Dong. Apologize to him, not because I tell you to, but because it is right. Nodded slowly. I will do this today. As Yang left the medical bay, he found Commander waiting in the corridor. The officer stood with his hands behind his back, his expression serious. Corporal, may I speak with you? Of course, Commander. Began walking, and Yang fell into step beside him. For a time, neither spoke. They walked through the corridors until they reached an observation deck that looked out at Earth floating in the darkness below. I have served in the coalition military for 35 years, said finally. I have seen hundreds of warriors from dozens of species. I thought I understood combat in all its forms. He turned to face Yang. Today you showed me that I was wrong, the way you fought. It was unlike anything I have witnessed. It is an old way, Yang said. From my world, we call it ninjutsu, the art of perseverance. I wish to learn more about this art, said. And more importantly, I wish for my soldiers to learn. Would you be willing to train a group of warriors? Yang was surprised. You want me to train? Your techniques could be valuable. The way you move, the way you conserve energy, the precision of your strikes. These are things our warriors could benefit from learning. Met his eyes. Also, it would be good for my people to understand that strength comes in many forms. Today you taught my nephew humility. Perhaps you can teach my soldiers wisdom. I will need permission from my superiors, Yang said. I have already spoken with your station commander. Permission has been granted, smiled slightly. It seems everyone is eager to learn from you now. The news of Yang's victory spread through Terra 7 like fire. By the afternoon, soldiers from every species were talking about the duel. The story grew with each telling, becoming more dramatic and more impressive. But the core truth remained. A small human warrior had defeated a prince using nothing but skill and discipline. The other alien species who had mocked humans now approached them with curiosity instead of contempt. If one human could defeat someone like, what else might humans be capable of? Perhaps Earth deserved more respect than they had been given. Lieutenant Park found Yang in the training facility that evening. He was teaching Jin and 3 other human soldiers basic defensive movements. Park watched from the doorway for several minutes before speaking. Corporal, may I have a word? Yang bowed to his students and walked over to meet her. Yes, Lieutenant. Park looked uncomfortable. I owe you an apology. I ordered you to stop your training. I called it embarrassing. I said your grandfather's teachings were not relevant to modern warfare. She shook her head. I was wrong about all of it. Watching you today, I have never seen anything like that. You made it look effortless. It was not effortless, Yang said. I have trained every day since I was 6 years old, 22 years of practice. But I understand what you mean and I accept your apology. The station commander wants to form a special unit, Park said. Human soldiers trained in these traditional methods but also equipped with modern technology. He is calling it the Shadow Corps. He wants you to lead it. Yang raised his eyebrows. Me, I am only a corporal. Not anymore. Your promotion to lieutenant came through an hour ago. Congratulations, Park smiled. You deserve it, and you deserve command of this unit. Will you accept? I will need to think about it, Yang said honestly. Leading others is a great responsibility. Take your time, but not too long. The Coalition War Games start in 6 days, and the commander wants Shadow Corps to participate. Over the next few days, everything changed on Terra 7. Yang spent his mornings teaching a growing group of students. Humans came first, eager to learn from their hero. But soon, aliens began requesting permission to observe. Then some asked if they could join the training. Was true to his word. He apologized to Private Dong publicly, in front of both human and soldiers. Then he asked if he could train with Yang. The prince worked harder than anyone, determined to overcome his previous arrogance through discipline and dedication. Jin became Yang's assistant instructor. She had learned quickly and understood the principles well enough to teach basics to newcomers. She worked with the same dedication she brought to everything else, and her skills improved dramatically. Captain Miran visited the training sessions often. She said it was for intelligence purposes, to understand the new tactics being developed. But Yang noticed she stayed longer than necessary and asked questions that went beyond tactical concerns. After one session, she approached him privately. "Thank you for what you did at the banquet," she said. "You did not have to step in. Most people would not have." "It was the right thing to do," Yang replied simply. "Still, I am grateful." Miran hesitated, then added, "Perhaps when things are less busy, you might have dinner with me. I would like to know more about your training and philosophy." Yang smiled. "I would like that, Captain." General remained on Terra 7 for the war games. He spent time with his son, and the relationship between them improved. The general also met with Yang several times, asking detailed questions about Earth's martial traditions. "Your planet has something rare," said during one conversation. "Most species develop technology and forget their old ways, but Earth preserved these ancient arts. You have thousands of years of warrior wisdom. That is a treasure more valuable than any weapon." "We nearly lost it," Yang admitted. "In my grandfather's generation, many thought the old ways were useless in the modern world, but a few teachers kept the traditions alive. They passed them to their students, who passed them to us. Now, because of you and the Coalition, these arts may spread to the stars." "The galaxy will be better for it," said. The Coalition War Games began on schedule. 40 species competed in various events: combat simulations, tactical puzzles, endurance challenges, and team competitions. Earth's Shadow Corps participated in the team events. The Shadow Corps consisted of 12 human soldiers trained by Yang in combining ancient techniques with modern equipment. They wore light armor that allowed full mobility. They carried standard weapons but used unconventional tactics, and they moved with the discipline and coordination that came from intensive training. In the first event, an urban combat simulation, Shadow Corps faced a team from the Empire. They were known for their aggressive tactics and overwhelming firepower. Everyone expected them to dominate. But Shadow Corps fought differently. They used stealth and misdirection. They set traps and ambushes. They struck from unexpected angles and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Within 15 minutes, they had eliminated the entire team without losing a single member. The arena crowd erupted in cheers. Earth had won its first War Games event. Shadow Corps won 3 more events over the following days. They did not win everything, but they won enough to place Earth in the top 10 of all competing species. For a planet that had only joined the Coalition 2 years ago, it was an incredible achievement. On the final day of the War Games, there was a closing ceremony. Representatives from each species gathered in the main arena. Awards were given out. Speeches were made. Yang stood with his Shadow Corps team, wearing his new lieutenant's uniform. Jin stood beside him, now promoted to sergeant. The other team members had also received commendations and promotions. When Earth's team was announced, the entire arena stood and applauded. It was not just polite recognition. It was genuine respect. The humans had proven themselves as warriors worthy of standing alongside any species in the galaxy. That evening, Yang returned to his quarters to find a message waiting. It was from his mother back on Earth. She had watched the War Games broadcasts and wanted him to know how proud she was. She also said his grandfather would have been proud too. Yang read the message twice, then looked at the katana hanging on his wall. He thought about his grandfather's words, spoken years ago in a small dojo in California. The path of the warrior is not about defeating others. It is about mastering yourself. When you master yourself, you can face anything. There was a knock at his door. When he opened it, he found standing there. The prince bowed respectfully. Sensei said, using the human word for teacher that Yang had taught him. Tomorrow I return to my home world. I wanted to thank you for everything you have taught me. I am not the same person I was 2 weeks ago. We are all always changing, Yang said. The question is whether we change for better or worse. You have chosen better. Smiled. When I become ruler of my people, I will remember these lessons, and I will work to build friendship between our worlds. He extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. Yang shook his hand. Then the future will be bright for both our peoples. After left, Yang stood at his window and looked down at Earth. The planet glowed blue and green and white in the darkness of space. Somewhere down there, in 1,000 different places, people were training in the old ways, learning discipline and respect, building strength of character alongside strength of body. And now, because of what had happened on Terra 7, those teachings would spread to the stars. Other species would learn that humanity's greatest weapons were not their ships or their guns, but their spirit and their wisdom. Yang smiled and returned to his meditation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to share what his grandfather had taught him. The journey was just beginning. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never judge strength by appearance alone. Never dismiss tradition as irrelevant. And never, ever mock the quiet ones who practice in the shadows. Because when the moment comes, the tiger strikes and the whole world changes.